right now, there are several certifications out there that can help so-called consumers, people are wearing this stuff, actually differentiate. The problem is that you got to be careful which labels you're looking at, which certifications you're looking at, because there's a lot of greenwashing out there.
And what is greenwashing? I want the audience to know.
Greenwashing is pretending that something is so-called sustainable or good for the planet, when in fact it's not, because the term sustainability means everything to everybody. I mean, Exxon claims that it's sustainable.
Well, hi, everybody. This is Diane Gilman, formerly known as the Queen of Jeans, but now the proud host of my podcast, Too Young to Be Old, Fashion Thursdays. So, what is in your killer closet? Oh, yeah. I'm not talking about killer clowns. I'm talking about killer closets. And buyers beware when you start to think about fashion. And you know who's here to tell us how to beware and navigate? Douglas Mulhall. He is a healthy products expert, but I mean a serious expert with an incredible background. And today we are continuing our conversation about clothing that is not kind to you. May feel good, but I'll tell you what, your skin is your biggest organ, and what it absorbs affects your entire health system. And whoa, have we got some work to do. So, Douglas, so good to have you. Give us just a very brief background of how you became the expert you are, and then we have to start talking about our killer closets and what we're going to do about it. And I have to say, I was very careful choosing this title because as a kid, I was one of those spooky kids that was always sure, especially around Halloween. I had a really big walk-in closet in my bedroom. We lived in an old Spanish home in LA. I was always sure there was a monster in the closet. And actually, I wasn't totally incorrect. So let's have our followers know how you became the distinguished and respected man you are in the product arena today, and one of the specialties, fashion.
Well, Dan, I'll make it brief because actually we really want to get into this topic. But I've been working on this for the past 30 years, and we actually have an institute in Hamburg, Germany, of all places, and it is called EPEA, the Environmental Protection Encouragement Agency. It's a little play on the US EPA, who are always into enforcement and negative and this and that. And we decided that actually it's time to be positive about things and show how things can be positively defined instead of defined as negative or less bad for the planet. So we started off with this philosophy that was quite different from all of the rest of the environmental movement at the time, which basically said, you know something? We know what we're against, but what are we for? It's time that we were for something. And so I've been working with some of the world's top chemists and chemical engineers to actually develop healthy products, products that are measurably healthy for your body and your brain and the environment together. And so this idea, this concept of positively defining things, we have found that people not only react really well to it, but employees of companies react well to it because suddenly they're not trying to be less bad anymore. They're trying to be actually more good. And time again, we've seen companies that are manufacturing products get really enthusiastic about this. We've been told that the absenteeism drops and people are really positively motivated. So this is what sets us apart.
Okay, so let me just give you a very brief story about being totally disconnected When I was manufacturing fashion, somebody came to me one day at my own sewing room with like 20 workers in New York City, made all my own samples,
Yep.
bought the fabric. But hi, it's Diane Gilman. Guess what? If you are in the same bucket I'm in, which is women over 50, and you're thinking to yourself, how do I find out the best products to use? Maybe you've heard me talk about Purity Woods, and maybe you've asked me, I don't know, Diane, why do you love it? I'll tell you. Your skin is your passport to your visual to the world. If your skin is glowy, if your skin is healthy, you just generally look younger and are treated as a more vibrant personality. Why do I like Purity Woods? 100% organic. There is so much pollution in the air, so much pollution even if I go to wash my face with tap water. So many chemicals. I truly appreciate products that not only feel pure, but the scent of Purity Woods is just unbelievably refreshing. So, you know what? Give it a try. Get a discount using the code in the caption. Purity Woods. I love these products, and two of my very favorites from Purity Woods are the makeup remover, the exfoliator, which is just sort of like magic. So also, ladies, remember one more thing. As we age past 50, we do not turn over our skin cells as quickly as we did in our 20s, 30s, or 40s. You need not only a great makeup remover, but you need a great exfoliator to urge new skin cells to come to the fore. Purity Woods, they've got it all. Someone said you're not going to be able to use polyester from America anymore. America has literally banned it because the runoff is so poisonous to the water system. So we just took it to China. And I thought, really? Oh, China's okay with this? Maybe it has more water than we do. It never occurred to me that you were working with poisonous fabric and that you were dressing a public that way, and that it was going to eventually come home to you in one form or another. But unfortunately, one of those forms is cancer.
Yep.
So I never put together that it was just like, oh, China's going to do that? Well, that probably isn't going to be very good for China's health, but oh well.
Yeah.
And then it all comes, the fabric gets made, it has all kinds of chemicals in it, it comes back to us, and we sew it in America or
Yep.
not, or sew it in another part of China and deliver it to the American public.
And you know, Diane, it gives a whole new meaning to been there, done that, bought the T-shirt.
Yeah. You know, I see the point now where you're wearing, as a woman, you're wearing a bra, you're wearing a series of bras. There's bras out today that are so comfortable, no underwires, tons of spandex, tons of lycra, polyester, don't wrinkle, don't bunch up, throw in a washer and a dryer. And no one ever tells you that there are chemicals in that polyester and that spandex that have the potential to give you breast cancer because you've got that fabric up close and personal as a female all day long, every day, and in many instances at night too, as you sleep.
Yeah.
How do we cope with this? How do we convert our wardrobe? How do we even know where to begin?
Well, first of all, I just want to talk about polyester for a moment. Polyester is not the problem. And by the way, some of the most toxic substances known to humanity are natural. So just because something is natural doesn't necessarily mean that it's okay
Oh,
for you. So there's a false distinction between natural and synthetic, and polyester is a classic example of that because it's not the polyester that is toxic. It's all of the additives such as smoothers, UV resistors, and 8,000 different chemicals that go into making that polyester what it is. So to be very, and in fact, polyester is a very good product. And if you put the right additives into it, it actually can be quite safe, quite healthy, and quite useful. So that's the important thing to keep in mind. It's just like, for example, clothing that is 100% cotton. Well, clothing that claims to be 100% cotton is not 100% cotton. It's about 80% cotton, and it's 20% fillers, smoothers, UV protectors,
Yeah,
dyes, colorants, and everything else.
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
But here's my problem. I'm a consumer. I'm one of the ultimate consumers. I see shopping as retail therapy. It's weird, but it always makes me feel good. But what I'm buying is not necessarily what I should be buying. And somebody was saying to me, well, you've got to check the kind of spandex because there's poisonous spandex. Let me tell you what, I was a manufacturer. My basic goal was selling on TV, selling my product on TV. I was completely uninformed by my factories and my backers, my corporation, that there was anything going on here. And I don't even think my corporation knew. I think unless you are completely devoted to the subject, how do you figure out what's right and wrong for you in terms of what you are putting on the largest organ of your body, your skin?
Yeah, and I think also that the ground is shifting, which is the good news. I think that a lot more people, the evidence that we're seeing is a lot more people are aware of this for the simple fact of the matter that more and more people are getting skin allergies and all kinds of problems. So they're starting to look for more solutions. So to be clear, right now, there are several certifications out there that can help so-called consumers, people are wearing this stuff, actually differentiate. The problem is that you got to be careful which labels you're looking at, which certifications you're looking at, because there's a lot of greenwashing out there.
And what is greenwashing? I want the audience to know.
Greenwashing is pretending that something is so-called sustainable or good for the planet, when in fact it's not, because the term sustainability means everything to everybody. I mean, Exxon claims that it's sustainable. So the problem is that the whole area has been basically hijacked. And so the result is it's very difficult for the average buyer to tell the difference between what is a truly healthy product and what is just a so-called sustainable product that's just greenwashing. Like a sustainable product can mean it's kind of recyclable, but that doesn't tell you anything about the health for your skin. And so I just want to give two examples of labels that have been really proven to be somewhat trustworthy compared to a lot of the other labels, and that I would suggest that people look at very closely. The first one, and I have to say this was actually developed by our institute, but it's recognized by the US EPA as one of the leading and strictest labels, and it's governed by a nonprofit organization actually based in San Francisco called the Cradle to Cradle Product Innovation Institute. And it's called Cradle to Cradle certification. And this certification covers all the bases in terms of human health, environmental health, and everything in between. And it's quite strict. It's got different levels of certification. So if you've got a gold certified cradle to cradle product, you can be pretty sure that it's going to be safe to wear.
So is that a main label or is that a little side label? How do I know?
Right. Actually, it's not a brand label. It is a independent certification. So what you'll see is you'll see the brand label, but then you'll also see the certification next to it.
I have to tell you something. There's a lot of stuff in my life that is very complicated. And one of the things I love about shopping is you see it, you love it, it's an emotional purchase, and you buy it and you feel good about it and you like it and you look good and people say, oh, I love that. I never think of shopping as I've got to look at the label, I've got to look at the sub label, I've got to go to Cradle, I've got to Google that, it takes away to me the whole romance of retail therapy. But yeah, I mean, seriously,
Well,
it
it's
does
actually
to
not
me.
that difficult though, because
Oh,
usually the certification is sewn right into the label. So if people look at that, they know that they can trust it. They don't have to look anywhere else. They don't have to go on to the web or do although it really does help to do that. The other label that's really good and quite broad that goes into the textiles themselves is called OEKO-TEX or OEKO-TEX. It's OEKO-TEX, OEKO-TEX. And it is applied basically to the textiles that go into this type of clothing. And there's a whole bunch of brand labels that use either the OEKO-TEX or the Cradle to Cradle label, Bowl and Branch, Parachute Packed, Simple and Opulence, Avocado, Ocean
we'll
Safe.
list all of that afterwards. Yeah,
Yep,
we'll put all of that into our text.
sure.
So it is going to take more than a village and climbing a huge mountain to start to change a public point of view for one reason, Douglas: money. How much more expensive is it to possibly dress healthy? And do you have to back up that healthful dressing with the right cleaning products that are organic and non-toxic? It becomes an entire chain of events, doesn't it?
Well, yes, it is a chain of events, but just to simplify things, it doesn't have to be that complicated, Diane. So the I think the first thing that anyone should do is actually look at their bedding. This is the first thing, rather than your clothing. And why is that? That's because for 6 to 9 hours of the day, you have your face in your pillow
Yep,
and your sheets.
yep.
So the place that I would start is to look at the environmental labeling on the bedding that you have, because that's the biggest favor that you're going to do for yourself. And you will get away from what you talked about was the retail therapy, except you'll feel pretty good about your bedding. So that is the very first thing that I would recommend doing.
I did that with my bedding from a company that manufactures organic cotton out of Portugal. And the one thing that I noticed was the difference of the feel against your skin was just amazing. And supposedly cotton is pure. As I said, it's organic, but it's not finished with chemicals. And it every time I crawl into bed, it's like being a princess. I mean, it really feels so much better. However, the price was definitely an apparent spike way up there. So the one thing that always worries me is look at our largest retailers in America: Target, Walmart. What do they stand for? Price, low price.
Mm-hmm.
You can get it and you can get it for less. And we are so trained to that as a society in America that I don't even know how you start pushing people's minds over into the health area from the bargain area. And
Mm-hmm.
bargain, having been a manufacturer, it's all about taking the least amount of steps and labor to get the price you need to achieve for your target audience. And honestly, really, Douglas, when I think about my wardrobe, I have an arthritic knee. I have to wear a brace or a sleeve a lot on my knee. So I need bottoms that have spandex in them. And the thought that all my bottoms are unhealthy spandex and I would have to replace them, what would I replace them with? And how would I identify what's a healthy spandex as opposed to an unhealthy spandex?
Well, first, I want to address your question about price. We recognized that problem a long time ago. That's why we worked with C&A, which is a well-known brand across the U.S., and their products are highly price competitive. So you don't have to have an expensive product in order to be healthy. That's for sure. Now, on the other hand, a lot of people will also go for designer labels, Hugo Boss, Umber and Ochre, stuff like that. So it's not all looking at the price for things. Certainly, a lot of people do, and if they do, there are definitely lines out there that are very price competitive. And Walmart, for example, will carry a lot of these lines.
Oh, that's great. Okay, and we'll list all of them for the audience. So, but I don't even know what CNA is. What does CNA manufacture?
They manufacture all kinds of very low-priced clothing.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So, T-shirts, regular shirts, blouses, women's, men's clothing, you name it. And if you go onto the CNA website, which, we'll list later, you'll find, for example, a whole line of cradle-to-cradle certified clothing. So you don't have to pay through the nose. But having said that,
Yeah.
a lot of people do go after the expensive labels as well. So it's a combination of things and not just one thing.
Do you think manufacturing clothing in Europe, let's say Max Mara, Yves Saint Laurent, Burberry, whatever, and a lot of that stuff actually is manufactured in China and brought back to Europe. But do you think that the standards for healthy apparel manufacturing in Europe are higher, stricter, healthier than America or China?
Well, as you know, most brands are global. So, and they don't stop the line and say, we're selling this one in Europe, so we're going to take all the nasty stuff out. So you can be pretty sure that if it's meeting some of the European regulations, but I want to come back to that in a moment, that it's going to be the same product, that's sold in other parts of the world. But having said that, the problem still is that government regulation has largely failed the consumer because it's simply, on one hand, it's not strict enough, but on the other hand, it's not really directed at helping companies and consumers with affordability. And that's why these nonprofit labels that sit between government and the private sector are so very important to establishing that. And so that's the answer to your question. It's not the region of the world. It's rather what types of rules that the companies are applying to themselves, because a lot of companies are starting to see a really huge marketing advantage in actually doing this. So it's, again, it's not the same world that it was 5 years ago, especially amongst, younger buyers. They're not all into fast fashion. And if I can talk about that for a moment, you just need to look at the exponential growth of previously owned clothing. Now, why is previously owned clothing better for you in a lot of cases than brand new clothing? And it's very simple, because a lot of the stuff has been washed repeatedly and a lot of the toxins have already been taken out. So when you're using pre-owned clothing, you're getting clothing that is, to a large degree, been detoxified.
Oh,
So
that is so interesting. But I want to just tiptoe in one question. So let's say that I go and I'm going to buy pre-owned clothing that has perhaps a wool content to it, or it's something I consider very high end. Um, and I send it to the dry cleaners and I'm not going to an organic cleaner. Then I poison it all over again, right?
yeah, well, I mean, it's a good point that you make. People, if you want to just blindly hand it over to, a dry cleaner that's using these same old toxic ingredients, yeah, you're going to end up with a
Yeah.
residue in there that's problematic. But again, the dry cleaners are also changing, and that's partially due to regulation. The stuff that they were using has been banned, in a lot of areas, also because
Oh,
of the
interesting.
air pollution. So yeah, you do
Wow.
need to, when you go to the dry cleaner, you need to ask them, are you meeting any guidelines? What is it? Are you using a strictly synthetic chemical process, or what
Are
process
you kidding
are
me?
you using?
My dry cleaners, they're fabulous. And we have to send out the sheets and stuff to get them laundered because I live in an apartment. There's a big um, vehicle in terms of a washing machine I can put in an apartment in New York City. But these guys barely speak English. I would be dying going to them and saying, I'd like to talk to you about pollution. Could you give me a list of chemicals? I mean, I can barely get, can you deliver this on Wednesday?
Well,
So,
you might want to think about changing dry cleaners, but
yeah, well, there is that.
yeah, but the
But,
other thing is, on one hand, people talk about how uh, it's really important to have cheap clothing, inexpensive clothing. Well, you know better than anyone else, when you go to the dry cleaners, actually the cost of dry cleaning your clothes starts to exceed the cost of the clothing itself.
huge. Yeah.
So, a lot of people should think about, do I really need clothing that needs to be dry cleaned? Or can it just be laundered?
Yeah,
So,
I'm looking for a lot of wool content clothing,
yeah,
being in New York, being in the Northeast of the United States, that is hand washable. So
yeah.
I have definitely made that conversion.
Well, good for you.
But I do think that for the general public, something that you had goals set for when you were spending money. And the first goal is, does it fit? Second goal is, does it make me look good? Third goal is, do other people perceive me as thinner, taller, smarter, more fashionable, more in the know? Um, to add the extra layer on of yikes, this may be poisonous. I
Let me give
think
you a
that,
statistic. Let me give
oh,
you a statistic,
okay.
a current statistic. Okay, all of what you're saying is correct, but there's a big but to it. The ground is shifting. The recent surveys have shown now that up to 40% of consumers are considering the social and environmental performance of the companies that are selling them their products.
Fantastic.
That is a
Fantastic.
very big number. That
Huge.
that's a huge number. So the mentality is changing, especially amongst the new generations that are coming up. So it's not like it's static anymore. And you can see example after example after example where when the social misbehavior of a company or its executives, as we've seen recently with Abercrombie,
Oh,
for example,
whoa.
suddenly there is a consumer response to that.
Yeah.
And it didn't used to be that way, but it's
Yeah.
definitely happening now. So I would say that, yeah, you're correct, but you would have been more correct 5 years ago than you are today. And there's a whole new way of thinking that's going on, and it's a very positive way of thinking. So I think that's the answer to your point.
There's nobody who would want to do it more than me, but I, like the majority of the public, cannot afford to throw out my entire wardrobe. But it is good news that and I am also pack rat. Mr. Mulhall. I keep stuff forever. I was pulling scarves out the other day that were 25 years old, but they were almost dyed to match to something I just bought. And
Well, but that's a good example, Diane. That's in effect, that's pre-owned clothing because
yeah, it is.
you've cleaned it or you've washed it so many times that stuff has largely washed out. So it's actually pack ratting isn't a bad thing in that respect.
And also, it's very interesting. I always talk about closet shopping because I am a pack rat. I keep everything forever. And within a certain range, I've gone up in weight, down in weight, but I stay within a range where I'm able to fit into certain sizes. But, I think that seeing a wardrobe that is not doing great service to your body is something where I personally believe if you're going to be the American Cancer Society, this should be something you discuss. It's never discussed once you get cancer, and I went through breast cancer. Um, Everything was based on hormones, but in fact, the bras I wore, the underpants I wore, everything was polyester spandex based. I never checked it. It never seemed to me like it would be dangerous. So it's good to know the danger from within your closet and maybe think that when you buy something new in poly and spandex, maybe you put it through the washer 3 times before you wear it. I always
Yep.
put them through once. I don't want people's hands from a factory touching me through that garment, but I'm thinking multiple washings will help. And I think that, and I'm hoping that some real major organization like the American Cancer Society starts making people aware of their killer closets. So this is part one of a series of 2 podcasts. And you see, every time I do that, the balloons go up. It is just crazy for me. Okay. I have no control over any tech at all. And there must be Mercury retrograde this week because I am running wild. I
Well,
mean, seriously.
Diane,
But
maybe we can just finish off by saying this. You've heard the phrase "you are what you eat,"
yes,
but the
a
thought to
million
leave
times.
people with is "you
You
are
are
what you
what you
wear,"
wear.
because your
Wow, I
skin is
love
absorbing this and
that.
you're breathing it as well.
You know, when I bought those sheets from Portugal, um, and they were one of the most expensive things I ever bought, I noticed the difference immediately.
Yeah.
I noticed that the cotton shaft was so silky. It didn't have any kind of weird smell to it. And I also noticed, and this is a sad thing for me to say, but when I was manufacturing, the one consistent complaint we got all the time about our jeans, the DG2 gene, was whoa, it smells like diesel fuel. And it did. And it must have come from packing tightly, sitting in the hold of a ship in containers for a long time and then a long voyage. But the smell was a number one complaint from customers, and the factories, the container vessels never, ever put out one iota of energy to solve that problem. But you
No,
know what?
but you've brought up a very good point, Diane, and that is first use your nose. So
Ah,
if you want a good indicator and you can't find one of these certifications, just put your nose next to the fabric, and that'll tell you a lot. So
you know what?
we call it the smell test.
That is so true.
And
That is so true. And I fought for the customer for almost 30 years, and just said the smell is not acceptable. And what are we going to do about it? But there was something within the chain of events that make a garment go from nothing to fabric weave to cutting to placing with sewers to manufacturing to putting plastic bag over it, everything you do that just was not you couldn't penetrate it. You couldn't get them to stop and admit it and get it done. And so when I had to wear my clothing, which I did love actually, for any kind of television show on HSN and QVC, we would wash it 3 to 4 times.
Yeah.
And you'd still have the essence of the smell. But I love this. You are what you wear. Beware. Beware, you are what you wear. Okay, we're coining phrases here. I love that. So we're going to sign over and out on episode 1, and episode 2 is going to be an overview of how your environment, the environment you are in naturally, and the environment you create within your own home, your own car, whatever, your office, how that affects your longevity. And I leave you with one of my favorite phrases from Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones. No one wants to grow old, but no one wants to die young. So we better get on it and start being more aware. Thank you so much, Douglas Mulhall. I will see you for episode 2.
Okay, great, Diane. And if people want more information, they go to my website at natureoflongevity.com.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.